Ah, nice, calm,
Yep.
feels like home. You know what I'm saying? Recommended a review. This week we on Lil Yachty. Let's start here. Who is Lil Yachty to you, my friend?
Lil Yachty, man. Lil Yachty came out very controversially. Back in 2013, 2014, when he came out with it wasn't Broccoli. Broccoli came out 2014, 2013. There was a very it was One Night. That was the song that made Lil Yachty really pop, was One Night. And from the time that Lil Yachty has come out, Lil Yachty almost took over the face. Hip hop always has one artist who is on the dartboard face, or is the poster child of new whack. Whether that is, and usually and traditionally what it's been, it's always been One Night Drop 2017. Damn, wow, that's crazy. So yeah, One Night Drop 2017. I
I'm
can't.
stuck on New
That's
Whack. My man is
no, but this one. No, this is what I'm saying though, right? And I don't think how hip hop does that is fair, because oftentimes it's because it's a new artist and it's a younger artist that comes in um with a not as conventional sound, and then later gets labeled as new whack. We've seen it through Soldier Boy, we've seen it through Yachty, we've seen it through Lil Pump, we've seen it through a lot of people. And like, I'm not grouping him into that grouping. I'm not putting him into that group, but it is important to be able to appreciate where he is now as an artist, as from where he started as an artist and all the criticism that he had coming in.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. You mentioned some of the initial success he had off of like one or two songs, and for a long time, Yachty to me was an artist I was perfectly content to let other people tell me when he had one, right? Not seek it out myself. I think I listened to Yachty's first project, and that only confirmed. I was like, "Yep." Other people will let me know when Yachty has one, and that's been perfectly fine up until this point. But this was the first time I think I've really heard a loud clamoring that he has one with an album. Our producer brought it to us, told us to check it out. Did you hear anything about this album before we dove into it?
I did. I didn't. I didn't. I kind of went into it green. I was actually going to ask you, is that what you've been hearing people say about this album, that it's good?
I've heard a lot of people say that it's good. I've actually heard a lot of people say that they feel like this album is doing much better what Drake wanted to do with Honestly Nevermind. That it's a more successful departure into something more dancey and pop. Um, I didn't really agree with all of that, but I definitely went into it hearing that people had liked it, and that he had done a really good job doing something very different.
Yes. So with let's start here. I think what the key takeaway from it is that it is very refreshing to be able to hear a a alternative an alternative a hip hop artist doing an alternative sound that strays very far from where traditional hip hop is at the moment. And I think you can only get there as an artist once you have a lot of confidence in your ability to be able to satisfy what has traditionally been your core market. And you see Yachty do this type of thing almost backhandedly for a long time. I Took the Walk to Poland was a very, very simple song, but that had a lot of popular appeal. And things come out often that Yachty has been writing for the City Girls. So clearly this man is extremely talented. I think that at some point, in being so talented in a space that you have a lot of prowess in, whether it's known or unknown, you take a big step, right? And you go to this alternative route. I think this alternative step that Yachty took is not particularly it's refreshing from him, but it actually, if you look through where this inspiration comes from. A lot of art, it is the classic alternative sound that artists take. You've actually heard the intro, Black Seminole, sounds a lot actually like Blue, Blue by Jaden Smith. Even the sound of alternative and rock mixing together is very Jaden Smith-esque. Last we forget Igor, which was dropped by Tyler, the creator, a few years ago, which was an even more impressive sound from this. I don't think that you will find a lot of current hip hop albums that are as full in their put together sonically. But the most disappointing part of this album, the thing that I liked least about this album was Lil Yachty. But the rest of the album I enjoyed.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun listening to this album.
Interesting. Didn't expect that from you.
Yeah, man. I didn't. I was telling you before off mic that if somebody took any of these individual songs and was like, "Yo, check this out," I'd be like, "All right." But to throw on the album, I think there's a sense of direction. There's a sense of like, hey, this brother's having so much fun with whoever's in the studio, whoever's helping him pull this together. I wanted to take a look at the production credits to see how much he had to do on the production, because you're right. My favorite parts were Yachty's ad libs and the features and the production, the lush sound. It sounded trippy in a good way, right? In a happy way, in a positive way. Like you, some of my least favorite parts were when Yachty actually tried to get some bars off, or like was really trying to put in a verse. I was less impressed by that than I was impressed by somebody clearly having taken in a lot of different experiences and being brave as an artist, who I don't think people look for full and complete albums, to say, we're going to go with this idea, this concept, this feeling, and put it out there as a piece of music. I don't know how much I'll return to it, but it definitely gave me a different appreciation for Yachty as an artist, who up until this point, I really saw as somebody who hits only when the environment is set up for him to not try and just be himself. And this felt like he was still being himself, but it felt like he was trying. And I don't know if he was trying for like Jimi Hendrix in some places, or if he was trying for like a more soulful, like funk sound, but it was a fun listen. And I had fun hearing him have fun with this sound.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I was busy listening to when I was going through this album is, did Yachty hear someone have this album? The first halfway through, it sounded like he was like, "Man, I really like that sound. Can I have that?" And they're like, "Yeah, for sure. Just put your ad libs on it." That's what it sounded like a lot of the first. But as it keeps going, you can actually tell that one, he enjoys this alternative, more rock-ish, traditional punkish sound. Not just that, it's got a lot of the internet influence into it. It's got a lot of early Frank Ocean and the Weekend influence into it. It's got a lot of Jaden Smith. It's got a lot of Kid Cudi influence into it. Very Kid Cudi heavy. Looking at albums like Cudi and the Rager, Scott Miss Cudi versus the World. Those are all very much in that same line. So for me, it wasn't so much it wasn't the best step in this, because I think the highest version of this alternative sound from a rapper that we've heard, or just in general, was Tyler the Creator's Igor. So this to me is one where that was the target, and it kind of was watered down a bit. Um, what it does show me is that this dude is incredibly talented, extremely talented, but definitely it almost sounds like the artist who I enjoyed to hear this from, even Steve Lacy influence a bit. The least favorite parts for me were when Yachty was on the song, but the rest of the album actually sounded to me very. I enjoyed it. Standouts: Black Seminole. The intro is great. I dig a 7-minute intro. Ride was the audio from Yachty was very difficult to enjoy there, but it sounds a bit FK8 Twigs ish. Um, Sounds like I've officially lost vision. You can tell we're built with big stadium in mind. Like this would probably bang at a stadium. So I think from this, you can take a lot of things that increases live performance audio experience. But I think as a standalone work, it's going to be hard for us to look back, I think, at the end of the year and point this out as a standout project. I think, I, yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate you. I think you've given anybody who liked this album 17 different artists that you just recommended off of who this sounds like. So go check that out, from Twigs to Tyler, to even the internet and Sid. I definitely heard some Sid influence from that last album in here too. Uh, but yeah, man, this one, and with that said, I think this album looks better when you look at Yachty's discography than it will when you look back and compare it to the other music that's out around it. Um, but yeah, so I don't know how much I'll return to this. If I had to give it a score out of 5, I'd give it a solid 3 out of 5. Um, and I would ask you what else you listening to.
I'd also give it 3 out of 5. And before we get out of Yachty, I do want to commend Yachty incredibly for almost, he really is ahead of the curve musically. Back when Yachty was busy dropping, there was a point in time where Yachty was very focused on Detroit rap, and he was like, Detroit rap is the future. Detroit rap is the future. Turn around and we look, I Swear Vezo, Sada Baby, Baldy James. Where else are we going into this? There's so much talent. For two Doug. There's so, like, Detroit right now is actually producing some of my favorite works, and Yachty was very much on top of this. He did a completely Detroit focused album with the Detroit sound now that we all appreciate. So the dude is tapped in. He's talented. I appreciate somebody trying. I could see this going cool in a live performance, but for the most part, I don't think it's something that I'll return to. 3 out of 5 is accurate.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, man. Like Blake said, if you like this, listen to Sid's last album. That was really good. Listen to Igor by Tyler.